It's no longer rumor or speculation. Bloober Team is remaking Silent Hill 2, giving the reins of the most beloved game in one of the most beloved franchises to a middle-of-the-road Polish developer is a recipe for disaster. Or is it? The best way to predict the future is to look at the past. So we're going to take a look at all of Bloober Team's games to see if they are up to the challenge. They're known for horror these days, but between 2010 and 2015, they created games like Basement Crawl or Double Bloob. Come on, you remember Double Bloob, right? Needless to say, you're not alone. Most people have never heard of their earlier games, but that all changed with their first horror game, Layers of Fear, in 2016.
What do we do when we fail? We start over.
Layers of Fear is a first-person psychological horror game where you play as a disturbed painter trying to complete your magnum opus. Throughout, you'll navigate a Victorian mansion revealing secrets about your past. A past with many layers. This is a walking simulator with limited interactivity other than a few puzzles that require you to search the environment for clues. The game is all about the atmosphere and visuals, which were stunning for the time, and still look great today. Initially, the house appears straightforward. It's beautiful and intricately designed, but nothing out of the ordinary. However, as you explore, things start to change with some really inventive visual effects that subvert space and architecture in unsettling ways. The house soon twists into a nightmarish version, impossibly big and labyrinthine. At first, you'll distrust your own senses. Did I actually just see that? Eventually, you'll start to anticipate the next architectural shift or jump scare. There are traps and even ghosts lurking in the shadows that can kill you if you get too close. But they're few and far between and more a part of the haunted house visuals than a real threat. Death only leads to a grim cutscene and retracing a few footsteps. You can't jump, fight, or run from threats, which feels a little disappointing until you realize that the only monster to truly fear is you. Layers of Fear makes a strong entrance for Bloober Team into the world of horror. The mind-bending imagery and multifaceted psychological story compels you to delve deeper. However, it overplays its hand by taking a few interesting concepts and doubling, tripling, and quadrupling down on them. Observer is a first-person psychological horror game, but the setting couldn't be more different. The year is 2084, and the digital plague called the nanophage has ravaged Poland, resulting in widespread drug use, body modification, and the iron rule of a megacorporation. You are Dan Lazarski.
Mike Wazowski!
No, Dan Lazarski, a detective known as an observer, who can hack into people's minds even after their death. You'll investigate a lockdown tenement building in order to solve a series of murders and reunite with your long-lost son. The gameplay centers on talking to residents, examining crime scenes, and deciphering clues, all within gorgeously detailed environments, the twisting memories of deranged strangers, and one of the most intriguing cyberpunk narratives in years. Every scene adds a meaningful piece of the puzzle to a world and a story that you'll be drawn into. The writing is consistently engaging and genuine, even for the most incidental characters. Observer doesn't use violent combat or hide-and-seek mechanics to create a creepy atmosphere, and unlike Layers of Fear, it doesn't rely on cheap jump scares. Instead, it crafts a building sense of dread through environments, ambient music, and sound effects. Voiced by none other than the late Rutger Hauer, whose monologue in Blade Runner is the stuff of legend.
I've seen things you people wouldn't believe.
His performance gives a gravelly heaviness to each scene. Where Observer stumbles is in the occasional forced stealth, where getting caught is an automatic game over. While these sections are frustrating and immersion-breaking, thankfully they're rare. Observer wears its sci-fi, cyberpunk, and horror influences on its sleeves to create a compelling murder mystery in a hauntingly dystopian future. Even with the limited interactivity and the forced stealth sections, the world is so rich, detailed, and dripping with intrigue that you'll be haunted and captivated to the very end.
My name is Daniel Lazarski. I'm an observer.
Layers of Fear 2 isn't a direct sequel to Layers of Fear. Instead of focusing on a tortured painter in an opulent Victorian mansion, Layers of Fear 2 shifts art forms to tell a story of an actor during the golden age of cinema, as he takes on a new role in a movie being shot aboard a decadent ocean liner. Once again, Layers of Fear 2 is a first-person psychological horror game with the majority of your time spent exploring each space, picking up various objects, and solving puzzles to progress the story. This entry is more varied and ambitious than the original, and while it's no doubt a visually striking horror game, Layers of Fear 2 struggles to establish its own identity and explore its themes of anguish and despair in fresh or meaningful ways. What Layers of Fear does well is build atmosphere and an ever-escalating sense of dread. The creaking of wooden floorboards, rats scurrying past your feet, and the distant sound of water dripping create tension that makes you hesitant to turn around. The environment once again toys with impossible spaces, distorting the world around you when you're not looking. The mannequins strewn throughout the ship, seemingly acting out scenes. They move in creepy, jittery motion, which starts out really unsettling, but are featured so often that their impact is quickly diminished. And that's the biggest issue with Layers of Fear 2. Bloober Team has some really scary and inventive ideas, but since they repeat the same ones over and over, the building momentum of fear isn't maintained throughout the 10-hour playtime. There are glimmers of an excellent horror game submerged just below the surface of Layers of Fear 2. Carried by hauntingly beautiful writing and an unsettling atmosphere, Layers of Fear 2 is one of the most stunning horror games of its time. However, the story doesn't go far enough in tackling its heavy themes. The few chase sequences are a monotonous slog, and it relies too heavily on the same elements again and again throughout the experience.
Just want to apologize to Mike's mom and Josh's mom and my mom.
The Blair Witch Project was a smash hit found footage horror movie released in 1999, followed by a handful of terrible movie sequels that didn't seem to understand what made the original so special. 20 years later, long past the original's relevance, this game is released. But what matters is whether the game is any good or not, and I'd say it's mostly not. This is certainly the biggest stumble for Bloober Team. Blair Witch would be twice as effective if it were half as long, which is strange to say for a game that's only about 6 hours. But those are a long 6 hours. Once again,
Say the line!
this is a first-person psychological horror game. Noticing a pattern? You play as ex-cop Ellis, who ventures into the woods with his trusty dog sidekick, Bullet, to join the search party for a missing kid. Bullet may be the best thing about the game. He's your good boy German Shepherd who can sniff hidden items, follow the scent from objective to objective, and alert you to danger. You'll follow vague instructions on your walkie-talkie from one samey location to the next, struggling to tell one apart from the other. Using your camcorder, you can manipulate time to complete various puzzles. Remember how they manipulated time using a camcorder in the movie? No? Yeah, these puzzles seem to exist only to give you something to do, rather than because they actually make any kind of sense. Later in the game, you'll have limited combat that involves you shining a flashlight on these shadow monsters until they disappear. Toward the end, there's a looping corridor reminiscent of PT, but wow does it overstay its welcome. The setting, atmosphere, and underlying lore could have been perfect for a streamlined and focused horror experience. However, instead this game is bloated to the point of frustration. The story doesn't take advantage of the source materials in any meaningful way, the level design is a borderline train wreck, and the few genuine scares made the whole experience that much more disappointing. If any game in Bloober Team's library is a resume for Silent Hill, it's the Medium. Not only is this the strongest of their games to date, but they made some fundamental changes to their tiring formula. While the Medium is a psychological horror game, it's not in first person. I know. In fact, it smartly uses a dynamic fixed camera, which creates a sense of voyeuristic disconnection. Not only do you feel as if you're being watched, but by taking the camera control away, scares can be executed with perfection. You play as Marianne, a medium who can connect with the other side. After the death of her father figure, she's drawn into the abandoned Niwa resort to uncover the secrets behind her forgotten past and the origins of her abilities. The standout mechanic allows you to experience both the physical world and the spirit world at the same time. This really shines in sections where you can do something in one world to affect the other. like where turning the hands of a grandfather clock in the physical world moves time in the spirit world. The presentation is incredible. The visuals stand strong next to the best looking AAA games of the time, with richly detailed environments that create an oppressive and lonely atmosphere. Fantastic character and creature designs with impeccable atmospheric audio. The voiceover work is some of the best I've ever heard, and the score was created by none other than Akira Yamaoka from the little-known franchise Silent Hill. There's a real sense of evolution in the medium. Bloober Team took all of the lessons from the previous games and applied them here. The story and characters are interesting and multi-dimensional. The presentation is top-notch, and the atmosphere is haunting. The amount and variety of interactivity has been greatly increased, and while I'd want to see the split world pushed even further, it never felt like they were short on ideas. Okay, so after playing all of Bloober Team's horror games, are they up for Silent Hill? Well, I think we have to ask, what makes Silent Hill Silent Hill? It's a psychological horror with real, empathetic, and flawed characters. Check. Rich, detailed, and haunting environments that feel both real and somehow off. Check. Creature designs using body horror to further emphasize the psychological horror. Bloober Team has this too. Inventive puzzles that challenge without frustrating. This is hit or miss. Inventory management to aid in exploring and survival. This is definitely a weakness for Bloober Team, with some glimmers in the medium. In combat that's generally disempowering, this is probably Bloober Team's biggest weakness. Lastly, scares that come from deep within your psyche versus cheap jump scares. Bloober Team has shown their ability to do this. So the question remains, and I can't say with certainty one way or the other. Their body of work has both positives and negatives, but I do know that they're a passionate team who's hungry to prove themselves. They're able to learn and improve the quality of their works, and while they haven't perfectly nailed it yet, there's always something captivating, haunting, and intriguing. I'd much rather a passionate team who wants to prove themselves get a shot than a huge conglomerate who doesn't care. After all, we've never seen that happen, right?
Mary?
Okay, after taking a look at all of Bloober Team's games, do you think they're up to the challenge of remaking Silent Hill 2? Why or why not? Let's talk about it in the comments down below. If you like this video, hit that like button and subscribe. And if you're interested in the best Bloober Team game and the one closest to Silent Hill, check out my review of The Medium. I want to thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.